Cool. So, might put this up on YouTube. So for the sake of anyone looking on YouTube, this is me casting some of the IEM replays that I did not get to cast at IEM. I did about a third, actually maybe a fourth, no, a third, yeah, third of the games, being 3 streams, 3 main streams anyways, English streams, there we go. So I definitely missed out on a lot of games to cast, including the entirety of the round of 8s, but those are still fresh in people's minds, so I figure I'd give that a try at a later dates. But Zest versus Neeb actually sounded kind of cool. I do enjoy myself a little PvP every now and again, despite hating, you know, Protoss as a ladder, and a Terran person on ladder. I think PvP is actually really interesting, but to the intros. In the top right, as the red Protoss, it is Zest. And in the bottom left, as the blue Protoss, it is Neeb. And, yeah. Double gateway is always the way to go. When I solo cast, I usually do a mixture of course, regular, I guess, casting like I would normally do, where I'm, you know, more of the analysis person. Obviously a little bit more play-by-play, but then on top of all of that, I usually try and, like, learn a little bit, I suppose. That's just what I do when I feel like I'm not broadcasting for a tournament, I guess. I don't know what it is just is naturally what I do. So, like when I was casting Brood War, for instance, I kind of got the same mentality, and I would kind of teach and learn along the way. So, it's an experience. But I definitely don't know everything about PvP, and I feel like PvP is one of the hardest matchups to learn, because there's a lot of very specific timings in the early game. Whereas in other matchups, you can kind of get away with messing up the build order, or maybe not quite knowing what a gas first versus a gas after barracks means, because it usually doesn't impact the game unless it's like a T-Rex Reaper, TVT. PvP, I feel like everything matters. I mean, the gas timings, how many probes they have in gas, the pylon positioning, how many pylons, their probe positioning, you know, like. And then there's also the, I guess, headache, the frustration part of PvP that Protoss is, you know, not so much the observers, but the players will know, whereas there's a bit of coin flip, and that kind of sucks. You get your probe scout, you probably don't get an adept scout, because even if you go for adepts, they block out with a shield battery at the wall. That's why walling became so popular, and Legacy of the Void. And then you probably don't have anything beyond that to scout. You're either waiting for a Hallucinated Phoenix, or you went Stargate for an Oracle, or Robo for, you know, an actual observer, but it takes some time. So, you know, in this game, we actually have Zest going for something really cheesy. He's going for a Dark Shrine. Neeb is going for, I mean, an okay typical build. He's went for a Stargate first, right? What really sucks against a Dark Shrine build is, you know, your own Twilight Council, but even that usually gets a Robo in just enough time. Now, Zest would love to go ahead and deny the Oracle from scouting the Dark Shrine. That might not be possible, but trying to find some way of doing aggression actually finds him a couple Stalkers in the middle. A couple more Stalkers than what he had. And Zest still wants to keep up appearances, so actually by distracting these Stalkers, maybe he also distracts the Oracle a little bit, but the Oracle's actually moving across the map already. He saves the Stalkers and all of their whole life, which is the most important. But Zest, he already has a shield battery in both his main and natural. I mean, if you're going strictly for the Dark Shrine, it is an expensive tech path to go down. You afford a Sentry for a single Hallucinated Phoenix, which you see here. That is the build 99% of the time. And then you get shield batteries. You don't have much else. You don't have as many Stalkers, or, you know, on your way to some Twilight Council tech or a Robo that quickly, but you can see a shield battery effect right here. But does the Oracle scout the Dark Shrine? Holy shit, how does it not do that? Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold up here. Okay. That was so close. If he didn't get stubborn on that one probe, he would have scouted that immediately. As is, he catches right as it gets up to the main ramp. A probe block saves I guess maybe it's brethren, but unfortunately this one was not tagged with the revelation. The downside of going Stargate is that, well, yeah, you do have technically detection. You don't have very dependable detection in multiple areas, but this turns into a very interesting game now that this has been successfully held by Neeb. He killed 5 probes. He gets 5 probes of his own. Okay, 4 probes of his own killed. And the game continues on. They both have 2 Nexus. They both have what is now looking like more typical technology, Robo and Twilight Council. And they both have pretty even workers. So that could have been a much bigger disaster if Neeb had not been pushed to the side to see the Dark Shrine. Or I think he also might have seen the pylon and been a little suspicious from the get-go, but I mean, that can mean many things. Warp Prism's going to be a little cheeky. Neeb has 3 oracles, which of course devalue in time. There's only so many stasis traps you can set down or probe damage you can do before you wish you just had straight up, you know, more stalkers or zealots. But in this case, ends up being beautiful. Revelation cast on the DT, but an instant pickup and no Phoenix quite yet. There it is. It's gonna help pick that off. I guess just let the Phoenix down, or let the DT down, at least pulp the energy, right? Because a couple of probes went down on this side of the map. And I missed it. Rip. But Neeb finds himself only a single probe ahead. The Dark Shrine, Dark Templar is not gonna be dropped out. I was gonna say, at least pop the energy. Yeah, so unfortunately everything dies here. Oh no, just kidding. I was actually wondering if maybe he held it in long enough to get the revelation off of him, but there is a second revelation, good to go. Now we have another big difference in this PvP, Dark Shrine versus Stargate, but now we have very fast charge and a lot of gateways versus Immortals and upgrades, so like 2 different things on both sides. So Neeb's gonna be the one on the defensive here, and Immortals do much worse against Zealots than they would against Stalkers, right? But they still pack a punch regardless of anything they're up against, really, which is why they become a good all-around unit. But if you can hit this timing as Zest is doing, especially if it's a surprise, this is funny, then you can definitely overwhelm, and they might have wished that they had their own charge bots instead of Immortals, but this is just kind of a situation you find a lot in PvP, so it's not exactly fair to say that they also would have loved to have gotten the same exact composition and build, because, well, that's just not usually likely. What they can do is add on a lot of shield batteries, try and hold up until their own charge is done, and then have that front line, which is kind of what Neeb is going to do, it looks like. He's getting his own production and his own charge, but obviously a lot later, and with the backbone being more of those Immortals, where Zest could even bring in well, Archons from DTs, I guess I should say. Third base does come down, as Protoss seem to always do. They get all these gateways ahead of time, and they slap down a Nexus, but don't really build a lot of probes. That's why it's really shocking, Legacy of the Void, to see the true 2-base all-in from Protoss in any matchup. Usually it is kind of a fake third or backup third, whatever you want to call it, but these Oracles are sacrificing themselves to grab as many probes as possible. Actually, only 1 sacrificed themselves, so 10, not too shabby, but is he prepared for the attack on the other side? It's Archons versus Immortals, charge versus no charge. Can Neeb hold? He only has 1 shield battery. He knows it's on the way now, but I think it took him some time to realize that it was already here. Otherwise, I feel like shield batteries would have gone down. Zest breaks through the tiny little wall that Neeb tried to set up in a desperate last-ditch attempt. A force field comes down. I'm not even sure from who, but it doesn't really help Neeb, so hopefully it was from Zest. Now his units are a bit more protected. These Archons are having a lot of trouble, actually. This one's not even doing anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Just hiding on the ramp. Phoenix picks up a single Stalker. I guess that's kind of helpful. Oracles came back to try and do some damage. And Neeb was pushed back into a corner that originally got his Immortal stuck outside of force field. Turned out to be really good for him as it turned into a choke for the charge lots. And the Archons were derping on the ramp, derping out of range. And Neeb holds, but Neeb only holds without a third Nexus. So while Zest seemed to develop, push a lot into that, and he did, he's still down in probes. With a third Nexus, it takes literally 2 rounds of probe production room to catch up. Now that's still 300 minerals, right? That's still an investment, but it's one that I think he could make. The real problem right now is the upgrades. If Zest was able to grab the economy so that it was the flip of the economy, and with a third Nexus, I think that he's just now trying to desperately hold, but instead, we have the upgrades to worry about too. +2, I mean +1, like, okay, that also helped Neeb that defense. Kind of forgot to mention it, and it did help. But +2 to 0, like, that's a really big deal. Neeb takes kind of a hidden base up here, and I'm getting deja vu, like wondering if I actually did cast this, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. I just cast another game where Protoss player was able to sneak a 4th base, or 3rd at the 4th base, while holding on all in. It was more like a PVZ or something. Games start to really mesh together when you cast a lot. This Warp Prism is, well actually this is a brand new Warp Prism, isn't it? The original one died to a single Phoenix. This one can no longer do that. The Phoenix died along with the rest of the Oracles. Is there any point in Colossus and PvP? Tech Mirage asks. No, not so much. Some people tried, nice D-power on all those gateways. Some people tried, I think, along the many months of Legacy of the Void. I guess it's like 2 years old now. But almost always they fail, or they win, but they don't even try doing it again. It just isn't really worth how long rather, it takes to get there. And how little they help out of those crucial times. Archon sturdier, Immortal sturdier charge lots, well, they're cheaper and they come in bigger numbers. And now charge is even better than it once was, with added damage, so a lot of things really added up. Colossus Wars used to be such a magnificent thing to watch. I mean, kind of boring sometimes. But if you really understood the finesse to it, it was beautiful. Which is why Rain was a beautiful player, but that is in the past. So, big warp in a charge lots and a DT, takes out the cannon. Looks like Zest also finds the 3rd Nexus with his main army, and down that goes Neeb. While I was talking about his upgrades being a really big deal, he did need a 3rd base. He needed it. Good one. The robotics bit here from Zest seems to be... I think this is becoming more of a response, and Pros players can correct me if I'm wrong. 12 probes went down with that Nexus, but it seems to be a very common response, not to anything but being behind in upgrades. Well, I guess that's not true. It's a come-from-behind mechanic. That's the best way to put it, I believe. I rarely see disruptors when the game is even or when someone is ahead, unless, you know, it's a canning or something. Although I guess maybe not so much now. And this is great for combat mechanic because occasionally you do get those beautiful disruptor shots. Also great for an upgrade deficit comeback potential because the disruptors don't care about upgrades. So you don't need upgrades to make disruptors good, and you can't make them worse by having your own upgrades as the defender. So this is Zest's hold to make. He already kind of poked the bear by killing that Nexus, and while Zest would absolutely win this game with his economic advantage now, that upgrade could be a big deal. Surprising to see Neeb get Blink. I always feel like this is a very odd upgrade to get past, like, minute 7, basically. He sees the Disruptors now. Disruptors take a couple of shots to kill an Archon, and only one was soaked up there. You can micro in such a vastly different way against these things now that they pop on the first unit that touches them. So sometimes Zealots are amazing against them, and sometimes they're really, really dumb. Really depends on what concave and control you have. But this is getting into a really weird battle as some units go over to the right side, most units go over to the left. Does Neeb have an observer with his army? He does. It's right there. I'm blind. He doesn't want to have it home. And if 1DT was hitting that natural, it could be game over. But Zest is just trying to buy time, I assume, to build more disruptors. He's actually not building anything right now. He's so focused on microing his army. One disruptor goes down. The second one does get a shot off, but on like 2 Archons, is that really that helpful? Zest is plummeting in supply, and Neeb looks like he will take this game. GG. That was actually a really cool game. That was actually really nice. Thank you for your applause. I appreciate it. This is why I think Protoss is so good. Like, okay, Protoss themselves can hate it, and there's definitely been certain times where I have to restart the entirety about it. I'm not here. There's certainly been times where other matchups, mirror matchups, have been like that, where you're just like, okay, it's fun to watch, but it sucks to play. Well, I guess I'm trying to think of an example of that, and all I can think of is tank drops. But a lot of people didn't like watching tanks being able to fly in the medevac, so that was just me. Anyway, there's been other times, but I still find PvP really enjoyable. Oh, thank God it saved my spot. What a throw. Was it though? I mean, he was always gonna have a tough time. Because even though he was even on an army supply, And, I mean, maybe he had, like, more charge lots to the soccer count. He was super behind in the upgrades, so... I don't know. On to game number 2. And in the bottom right, as the red Protoss down 1, it is Zest. In the top left, as the blue Protoss, it is Neeb. The nice thing about doing these replays, too, is that I truly don't know who won. I guess I actually could spoil the results with how many games there are, but sometimes I don't get to do that, so I don't know who won this one. This would just reflect their standings in a group round robin, so unless I really memorize the results here, I wouldn't remember. I know both of these guys didn't get out of groups, so this is really a very anti-spoiler. It's kind of set up. But what is Zest gonna do here? That was such a topsy-turvy game. You know, you had Zest barely get this, Neeb barely got the scout on what Zest was doing. Zest getting a couple of leads with the economy, but then falling behind on those upgrades. I think he was behind in the game, and his combo attack plus expand was just a very smart thing to do. And as such, it makes sense that he eventually straight up lost. But it was still a game where it felt maybe better positioning, or 4 turtles instead of 2. Maybe his harassment is a little bit more, and the Phoenix doesn't kill that DT or something like that with the Warp Prism. I feel like that could have easily swayed the other way. All it takes is Neeb being 10 less probes at certain points, or 10 less army supply, and Zest actually has a really good shot at winning the game. Zest is also a really good PvPer. That has stayed true throughout his entire 2016 slump. At least he was good at PvP, even if his PvZ was, honestly, it sometimes god-awful in 2016. He's since elevated to Zest as we would know him, but still not the tournament dominator that he was before. But he's getting closer, and PvZ still ends up being his weakness, but not nearly as bad as it was, guys. Like in 2016, sorry, 2017. Using the wrong year. In 2017, last year, yeah, he had some really bad games. I remember like the beginning of 2017, watching him play against a Zerg was like watching someone from 2013 come back and play the game. So it was like okay mechanically, but not even like great. And then his positioning and decision making was weird. But anyways, PvP was always a strong suit. He understands this thing throughout all of the meta shifts, all the compositional shifts, against any player. So if I was casting this when I had no idea what the results were, I would say Zest takes this. But Neeb has also had really damn good PvP. I know people really tried hard to argue with me on that point, and I was like, suck it, because I had like proof to back me up. But Neeb has always had amazing PvP, and just because he lost a Hurricane doesn't mean he has bad PvP. I say that both in his GSL run last year, as well as recently at IEM, he lost a Hurricane. A little bit of a soccer war going on, actually, so I'll continue talking about that point later, as this is really important. Zest actually moving in here, 3-2. Shield battery wasn't quite done. Grabs another soccer. 2 sentries, 3 sentries, actually. Wow. Okay, I wonder where the 3 sentries are. This is another thing about PvP that it's just like, I really feel like you gotta play a lot of it and watch a lot of it and analyze a lot of it to understand why the different sentry counts come out. I know if it's the last game with the Dark Shrine build, I know that one fairly well to say that if I saw 2 or 3 stalkers and 1 sentry, I'd be like, DT expand. But I don't know what you do against like 3 sentries. And there's another game where there was like 5 sentries, and I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I don't know. I mean, sentries are really good in the hands of these pros, because they're not very good. They're tickle machines otherwise, but in the hands of a pro, they're actually like even better than having another stalker. But I just wonder. Well, it certainly seems very defensive. I'll say that much with confidence. Very defensive to have a lot of sentries. We do have a robo follow-up here, which is very safe. In fact, double. Well, you got double shield bearers at the front, which is like already him kind of freaking out against what could be perceived as a very aggressive attack. He doesn't know if a pylon is put down or not. Just because there's a nexus doesn't mean that there's not aggression. And shield battery in the main, because he doesn't know if it's a Stargate or not. And unfortunately, this hyper defensive setup for Neeb is actually already kind of putting him behind, or should already put him a little bit behind. The reason it doesn't reflect right now in the numbers, Neeb up 1 probe and 6 army supply, is that Zest went something really quite greedy, but maybe very smart with what he scouted, and went for a 3rd base. So those numbers should change pretty soon. Neeb actually scouts this, which is really important. Now he can decide if he wants to go for his 3rd. Maybe he takes the outside 3rd, which puts him in a bit better position. Actually, looks to be what he's doing. Or if he tries to attack, he might try and do kind of both. Scare Zest and also expand and not even dedicate to an attack. But for right now, he's just setting up that 3rd, it looks like, while getting a Warp Prism to at least use some harassment. Zest, as expected, falls behind on the robo timing, but even went for a double forge here. So, like, really macro oriented. And as such, I gotta imagine that seeing that many sentries is just a huge tell that your opponent's doing something defensive. I imagine there's also some trick builds that Protoss do, where they get a lot of sentries and then they actually drop them and force field their opponent out, but those are not that common in PvP anymore. I think I saw Puck try a couple of times to do that, and it was very question marky because it never worked. But yeah, if his opponent kept thinking it was going to be defensive, well, that was another series, another day. I'll think about this more in time. But Neeb does take that 3rd base. It's almost done, but there is Zest's economy now reflecting the situation, and then shortly, as long as he keeps the probes alive, his army will also reflect that. So, a little bit of harassment with Immortal. Takes out stalkers when they respawn, takes out probes pretty fast, takes out structures very fast, but didn't see an opportunity to do that. I don't think Neeb knows about the other forge. Oh, he does. Never mind. Okay. You say Phoenix got all the way around. Charge, High Temp, or yeah, Templar Archives, High Templars on the way for Zest. Neeb only on his way to. Oh God! Well, that's a disaster. That's Neeb. That's Neeb's army supply obviously falling down, which it would have eventually anyways, but also any type of scouting and harassment going down too. So he's gonna have to rely on Luce and Phoenix, which is fine. They're both being pretty greedy here, playing macro games. They should have a lot of sentry energy, but still. Can't really depend on observers like you would in other matchups, because your opponent also has observers, and you don't want to get them sniped. So this actually is taking this opportunity. He's got 1-1. Charge, if chronoed, will definitely time out with this too, to move across the map and find Neeb. Down in armor supply, down in upgrades, down archons, down in charge, just down in so many damn things. Zest taking a really, I think, just beautiful read on this game and working with it. And I think Neeb also knows just how behind he is. Going back to these guys just both being really fantastic at PvP. You just gotta start thinking up ways to defend, and unfortunately, even if you know exactly how to defend in this dire scenario, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you really did just fall too far behind. Build order counters don't really exist in StarCraft 2 anymore. They're so damn rare, but it does happen. To slight degrees and large degrees. Oh, that is a large charge out warp in. Neeb actually recalls some of his army. Looks like a couple of Archons and a Stalker. Not a bad attempt to split it up, but only 2 shield batteries up here, and he's almost down half the supply. Neeb actually just taps out. That was entirely a build order game right there, which is super cool to watch, but probably super infuriating for Neeb. You know, he tries to play the smart early to mid game with the shield batteries and a solid build opener, and then it's not aggressive. It's not anything that actually harasses him. It's actually something quite greedy. So that just was Zest playing very smart. And I'm really not sure what else Neeb could have done. Maybe he could have all-in'd if he sees that again, but it's really hard to scout those fast thirds and change gears immediately. It usually doesn't end up working out that well. Recall makes first levels and ramps less game ending. That certainly did help with the reduction, but I also think people just got smarter, to be honest. That's actually quite a few explanations for why things have died off. Okay, so it's 1-1, game number 3 on Acid Plants. Please become a full-time caster. Thank you. I already am. As I was saying, these are just replays from IEM that I personally did not get to cast. And I'm casting them because it's a fun thing to do. And also, Diesel Max Power requested a solo cast, basically. So I figured it was a perfect storm of things to do it. Oh, pop up. There we go. In the bottom right, as the blue Protoss, he is Neeb. In the top left, as the red Protoss, it is Zest. Oh, I messed up. Damn it. Hold on here. Okay, fix it. I might do this more in the future, get replays of games, tournaments I haven't cast, and just cast them on the channel. I am open to casting tournaments on this channel. It's just a matter of actually finding ones that are open to casting and days that I can do it, but I also like laddering and playing other video games, so bit of it, bit of this, bit of that. So game number 3, we had one game which still ended up being kind of a macro game, and the second game was just pure macro and build reading, which is very cool but also very obnoxious, I'm sure, for Neeb, who was the unfortunate recipient of the worst build order in that game. We'll see how it changes here. We haven't really seen super hyper aggression in the early game yet. You know, the type that puts a proxy pylon down and then warps in a couple more stalkers. The difference of slow warp-ins or fast warp-ins, well, in the early game, it sometimes doesn't matter. And I think either player could do it. Going back to the whole Neeb Hurricane thing, you know, Hurricane gave Neeb this rap of not being good at PvP and maybe also losing a best of 9 against DNS, I suppose, also didn't do well. But the DNS thing seemed to be a little bit of a freak accident, as he then later dominated DNS in a best of 5, like a week later. And the Hurricane thing is, Hurricane is also like someone just really good at PvP. Like, it sometimes it's just something that exists. Like, people have these really sniper matchups. That's why in Pro League and Team League and GSL and all that, you would have snipers. And not just that patch Zerg named Sniper. So, it really frustrates me when people think that Neeb doesn't have good PvP. And if he loses the series, it's because Zest is also a god. Like, why is that so surprising? But I bring that up because I think Neeb is a well-rounded Protoss player, and Zest is also well-rounded. They both could do something aggressive, and Neeb does change things up a little bit. It's so common, though, that I don't call this really aggressive to put a Stargate before a Nexus. The only time it gets tricky is when this Nexus is a fake. This pylon's put down to give the illusion. And then you go into Phoenix and a proxy pylon to warp in to nullify a shield battery. Phoenix Lift does nullify shield batteries, and that all-in is tricky, but it does win a lot of games just straight up. Doesn't have to be a Phoenix, I guess. Also, it can just be an Oracle in the main, attack at the front type thing. But Neeb has no proxy pylon set up. He is sending units across the map a little bit. It seems to only be for scouting. Unfortunately, Zest, I believe, started off with 2 Stalkers, actually followed up with 2 Adepts, something that Neeb might not have expected, and the Adepts pounce on it. But here come the rest of Neeb's Stalkers. A little slower to back up their buddies, but eventually get here. Now they're gonna have to run back. Fearful the Adepts get ahead of them, as he doesn't want them to scout, first of all. Maybe he's still keeping up the illusion that something bad could be happening. No Nexus scouted, still puts a little bit of fear in Zest. And then also doesn't want to accidentally miss a shield battery up here, because that would just be embarrassing. Missing a shield battery on the ramp to block an Adept Shade seems to be one of the worst things a Protoss can do, so I'm sure it would be terrible at PvP. Oracle does bypass Stalkers, takes a little bit of damage, but much more importantly realizes that that means they're not in the main. So he's going to try and grab a couple of probes, but it's so difficult to do. The shield battery's already ready to go, and the only probes able to be killed would have been these ones at the gas geyser. So he tried, he failed, he moves on. There is a second Oracle, and if you time the Oracle correctly, which is not hard, their attack is literally a million miles per second, you get a probe kill. The shield battery can't do it that fast. Same as with Adepts, for instance. So here's where the real probe killing potential comes in. And then you go zap, 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 zap. There. And the Oracle lives. So that's much nicer. That actually means that his Stargate opener was good, right? Killing 7 probes and keeping both oracles alive. They also provide that really crucial scouting that should never be underestimated, even if Stargates do fall into play sometimes in matchups. Well, not Zerg matchups. And that scouting is leading Neeb to feel confident in putting on a 3rd base. Neeb also takes that blink, which I mentioned in the first game, I believe, that it's always weird to see blink after like 6 minutes. This is 5 minutes, so maybe still not that weird. But blink has gone from like this... Actually, for a long time in StarCraft 2, one of the most important upgrades... Oh! Got him. Trickster. Not even gonna lose a sentry for this. Very nice. That's a fake. That's a fake. It's not doing any damage. Oh, God. Okay. But yeah, blink has gone from this upgrade that was essential in PvP for a very long period of time, when it was, you know, was a 1 base, 2 base, 3 base thing. Colossus, you know, also had blink as a part of it, to kind of being like a maybe. I feel like blink was one of the most crucial things you could get for scouting, map control, survival. Skipping it was actually a really dangerous thing to do. And now, you know, in the last 2 years, it's become kind of this, well, last year, right? Because Disruptor blink was obviously a very important era too. So in the last year, it feels like, you know, it's so much better to get early charge. But this is still so early that it gives him the good old-fashioned map control, flexibility, harassment option, helps deal with Stargate if Zest had gone for it, which of course he didn't. And does help pick off some crucial units. As Zest's immortal count grows, obviously stalkers fall out, and you never see many... You don't see more than 10 blink stalkers, I feel, in PvPs anymore, unless they are going blink stalker disruptor. So, you know, you can already see him transferring out into that charge. Now, you got that 3rd base so much faster that Zest really needs to do something here. He's got a lot of gateways already on the way, so this 3rd base is, I think, once again, one of those, like, lies. Like, he means to take it, but he won't actually build probes for it. And I'm sure Neeb is also well aware that's a possibility. But sometimes it's just tricky, you know? I think when you see those fake 3rds in PvZ or PvP, or maybe even ZVP from the Zerg side, right? I think a lot of pro gamers do know that that doesn't mean squad. Like, it's more about how much of the worker, how many workers are there, than it is like the actual building. But to bank on it is a little difficult. That's my theory anyways, because sometimes I do see these really late Protoss 3rds that don't have any probes on it in PvZ, and I'm like, well, the Zerg obviously knows what's happening, and then the Zerg just rolls over and dies. So I think it comes more down to they can't just assume, because if they do think that it's going to be an all-in or an aggressive attack, then they fall behind in macro. So it's a lot more of a clever game in the pro scene. That is kind of an Artosis Pylon, but he grabs the Robo instead, which is not bad. Stop Immortal production, stop Observer production. Ideally would have stopped this Warp Prism coming out too, and then recalls, saves most of his stalkers. That was a nice little push. That was nice indeed. But the very common timing in PvP is this charge +2. I'm not sure what the most typical timing of it is, maybe 8 minutes, but this game it happens to be more like around 9. We see other timings depending on how wonky the early game has gone. Neeb has charge, but he doesn't have the upgrades. In fact, he'll barely have +1. This is going to be but maybe a tough hold, but if Neeb holds at all, he's you know, ahead 18 workers, which Zest already knew is going to be a problem because his 3rd was so late, and now, you know, definitely knows is a problem because it's taken so much time for him to actually come out and start doing this attack, preparing for this attack. He still wants +2 to be done. I'm sure he's trying to chrono that out. There it goes, yeah, but just a little bit late, and Neeb knows exactly what's going on. Some of his army is on the other side of the map. Stalkers sometimes don't look like army at all in this situation, but sometimes they also grab the Warp Prism, or they actually tear down an Immortal. This is going to be tough. I don't think Zest knows about that. No, he does. Actually, it gets a Zealot to pop it. Nicely done. Concave well in favor of Neeb, though, and the arm supply in favor as well. But will that second upgrade make or break the difference? Warp Prism Micro also coming down. It looks like that second upgrade doesn't matter squat, as Zest just gets utterly dominated here. Down half the supply. The amount of charge up that Neeb had was insane. Tears on the Warp Prism, and that is it. Zest. GG's. Neeb takes it 2-1. which feels like very much like revenge for that second game. You know, Neeb got the faster third here, took some control over the map, and won the game kind of easily. That looked a lot like last game, where it was Zest who took the faster third and then pushed and then won.